Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for the week of August 22nd, 2023. If it looks like I'm just a floating head, it's because I have a green shirt on to go against my green
Yes.
screen. But yeah, we're going to go with it. So I look like the Swami from Pee Wee's Playhouse. May he rest in peace. I'm just a floating head. So
Yeah, no, it looks
anyway,
cool. It looks cool.
yeah.
If I'd have known, we could have went with a blue screen. If you run out of we could always do that. But then I'd be a
Uh,
floating head.
Yeah, it's happened. Yeah, it happened sometimes with black shirts too. So anyway, last week of Night Terror's like regular issues. There's only the final issue, Night Terror's Night's End, which I guess with the way Night Terror's has been going, I could see how they could wrap it up in one issue. Um, but then again, at the same time, I feel a little bit like War for Earth 3 and a little bit like I did after the Lazarus Reign event or Lazarus Planet event, I guess. Um, which is kind of like what was the point, other than I suppose introducing a new villain in Insomnia as a big
Yeah.
bad who can come back around and what have you. Um, but I don't know, maybe because in a way, I compare him a little bit to the villain Nightmare over on the Marvel side of things, who has a similar power set to what Insomnia has, and he's never really been somebody that I would consider a big bad. Although I think at one time Marvel was trying to make him or suggesting he was as powerful as Mephisto, but even Mephisto is it's tough to call him a big bad. He's powerful enough, but I don't know. He's not in that same league with like Thanos or Galactus or someone like that. So
Yeah.
anyway, I thought it was overall a solid week. Once again, the non-Night Terrors books vastly outshine the Night Terrors books in my mind. So
Yeah.
I don't know. How'd you feel about the week, Rocky?
Yeah, I definitely agree. There was one Night Terrors issue that stood out for me above the rest of the Night Terrors, but the non Night Terrors comics were much better, more satisfying for me, and I enjoyed them overall because Night Terrors just seems like, for the most part, a redundancy, and that's I really, if the concept was better and more original and more inspiring to the writers, maybe, but I felt that overall Night Terrors has. I already know it's been a disappointment because I know how it ends, I can't wait till it ends so we can move on. But there are some positive aspects of Night Terrors, and we'll get to it. And I think you and I have talked about those issues that I think every writer with Night Terrors and all the tie-ins they were all handed a lemon, and only a couple of them made lemonade out of it, to make it palatable for us readers.
Yeah, and I will say, if it's someone's first DC event, it is very new reader friendly, and it does give a lot of context. We've talked about it. It gives a lot of context into who these characters are, what their anxieties are. I won't say fears, because we've been told by Joshua Williamson it's more about anxieties and stresses. And I definitely get that. You feel that throughout. So, well, let's go ahead and dive into Night Terrors number 4, written by Joshua Williamson. Art is by Giuseppe Camuncoli, Stefano Nessi, and Casper Wingard. Colors by Frank Martin and Casper Wingard, and then letters by Troy Petrie. So, narrated by Deadman, as it has been throughout, with him sort of breaking the fourth wall and talking to us. Deadman in the body of Batman, as he has been throughout. Wesley Dodds and Damian go into Arkham Tower. They're going to confront Insomnia in his, I guess we'll say his civilian guys. They know his body is still there. They know he's running this mission or running this event or however you want to call it. He's controlling things, pulling the puppet strings, moving the pieces around on the game board from Arkham Tower, right? He's there. He's asleep. That's manifesting his powers. And so as they get closer, it becomes clear that the closer they get to Insomnia, kind of the more powerful he is. Even Damien, who's been able to be awake this whole time, trained his body and what have you, he almost succumbs to falling asleep as they're going up the stairs to the room where Insomnia is resting. We actually learn Insomnia's name, Christopher Lucas, And no surprise at all, as I said at the very beginning, wife and kids killed by the Justice League. And this guy was a Justice League fan, for lack of a better term, right? Like he really believed in the Justice League. His son had on a Flash T-shirt the day he died. Christopher Lucas himself is wearing a Justice League shirt. It's the logo from the Scott Snyder run. And we're told that by Christopher Lucas himself, he said, the Justice League is fighting some kind of disaster down the street, some monster. We've been told to evacuate, but I believe in the Justice League. I know they'll save the day, and then the building explodes. And he lives, but as I suspected, as I stated, his wife, his son, his daughter, his children are dead, right? And he blames the Justice League. Now, you were told to evacuate, dude. Like, we know that this is going to make sense, but, you know, grief and trauma and what have you often don't make sense. You know, I'm not going to totally put the blame on this guy. He's gone through something traumatic and horrible, even if it's cliche and predictable. And even if it was sort of through his own fault of not evacuating like he was supposed to. But this is the event that triggered it. This is what he wants. And what we find out is he's been pulling the strings all along. He probably had the feeling that he wasn't going to be able to locate the Nightmare Stone. So he sort of manipulated events so that Deadman, or he probably didn't know it specifically be Deadman, but that somebody else would find the Nightmare Stone, use it on him, or attempt to use it on him in his nightmare. But what he does is he kills himself in his nightmare. He says, didn't you forget the rules of this game? If you die in nightmares, you die in real life. So he kills himself in the dream, which is a pretty dark way to go from Joshua Williamson. And what that does is it makes all the nightmares real, right? Like all the terrible things that the people that are still asleep, we know most of the heroes are awake at this point. They've managed to awaken themselves. But for a lot of those people who are still dreaming, their nightmares have bled into reality. They've because of Insomnia's death, which it's not 100% explained how that's the case, but because of Insomnia's death, the nightmares and horrible things from people's dreams have manifested itself into reality, and we're told that this is to be concluded in Night Terror's Night's End. So, again, we're not treading any new ground here. You know, this is all sort of cliche and been there, done that. I thought the art was okay. It is interesting, you know, in terms of Insomnia being a big bad, as opposed to just being a MacGuffin hunt. Williamson did add another layer, which, you know, this level of manipulation that Insomnia is able to sort of achieve, and the way he's able to put one over on the heroes and get them to actually do what he wants when they believe what they're doing is saving the day, that is worthy of being called a big bad. So I will give Williamson credit for the potential that Insomnia has later on. So anyway, I thought it was okay. Like Rocky said earlier, I'm looking forward to this event being over. And again, I know I went into it, you know, not really being very excited, because the whole idea of Nightmare on Elm Street matched up with DC Comics just doesn't excite me, and it kind of lived up to expectations. It's not a terrible story, but it's not something that really appeals to me, mixing superheroes and horror. So, anyway, what did you think of this issue, Rocky?
Well, I thought that the reference to death metal was interesting, because that is the event where Insomnia's family, again, this man Lucas's family is killed during death metal. I would hasten to point out that I thought at the end of death metal, when Wonder Woman made that deal with the cosmic gods, that the cosmic gods resurrected the entire planet. And that was because of Wonder Woman's sacrifice. So apparently Chris Lucas is the only person on the planet whose family wasn't resurrected. Or I guess I think that's a little bit of an inconsistency there. But maybe because Chris Lucas's family was killed during death metal and not near the end, his family wasn't resurrected. He's got Chris Lucas, Insomnia has every right to feel bad and to get pissed off at the Justice League. And I would think in particular Wonder Woman, That deal she made with the cosmic gods apparently resurrected everybody, I thought, except for Insomnia's family. And so poor Chris Lucas, poor Insomnia. I'm a little bit more critical of the reveal at the end that Insomnia's genius about, manipulating the heroes, to manipulating Deadman to bring the Nightmare Stone to Arkham Asylum to approach the physical body of Chris Lucas, and so that Insomnia then could, within his own nightmare, Insomnia could kill himself, and then somehow that would bring in everybody's nightmare. The problem with that is, number one, it's just a made-up rule. I mean, there was no way that anybody could have guessed that, and that's the worst type of storytelling in my view. Is that there's no way you could have guessed that, given what we know. So it felt contrived to me. I agree with you. On the other hand, your counterpoint is well taken. That, well, Insomnia is he is very, very manipulative, and we don't necessarily have to know the rules. We can just be told them, but it feels a little bit like a cheat to me. But whatever, I'll accept it. I will point out, though, that in all the tie-ins, in multiple tie-ins, and I won't go through each individual one, but in multiple tie-ins, well, I'll use one as an example, Ravager. Ravager went out of her way to make sure that her nightmare never followed her into the real world, like the Murder Man, for example. Well, now all of that's for naught, because all the nightmares are part of our world now, because Insomnia is making sure everybody's nightmare gets to enter the real world now. And so it just seems like a lot of the plot points and story points of the tie-ins is rendered superfluous and pointless because Insomnia brought them all the nightmares into the world anyway, it seems to me. But in any event, I will say that I am kind of curious to see, I think at this point, if you've been with it this long, it'd be kind of curious to see, okay, how are the heroes now going to battle Insomnia now that he has brought all these nightmares of everybody's nightmare into the real world? How do you fight that now that, I don't know what the rules are. And in fact, that's my criticism of the storyline, but it's my general criticism of anything mythological and magical, is that we never know what the rules are. It's sort of like Williamson writing The Flash, where he constantly made up different rules for the Speed Force, and it felt convoluted and all over the place. And the same thing Williamson did the same thing during Dark Crisis. The plot points changed to match whatever story he needed to in order to get from point A to point B. And it's just, again, I'm being critical, but because I do like some of what Williamson has done with Robin, and I'm in high anticipation of his upcoming Batman and Robin. And in any event, I thought this was okay, but I am kind of glad that we're nearing its completion.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about it being a cheat, but you're right. At no point did Insomnia come across as kind of smart enough to pull that off. But I guess it does provide a little more context into him. The things he was saying, you mentioned it last time, the things he was saying about where the Nightmare Stone was supposedly hidden and how he was way off and it was in that limbo dimension. Yeah. If he knew all along it was somewhere he couldn't reach it. So yeah, I can see both sides. Anyway, let's move on. Speaking of being wrong, Night Terror's Titans #2, written by Andrew Constant, Scott Godlewski, and Mike Norton are the artists. Ryan Cody and Hi-Fi handle the colors. Wes Abbott on letters. So last time I had said that this mysterious girl that we saw throughout it was my belief that it was sort of the human side of Raven, and the side that came from her mother, as opposed to the magical, more mystical side that wasn't affected by insomnia and wasn't put to sleep. So I thought that was what would have been the human side of her. Come to find out, completely wrong. I got that completely wrong. This female that we're not told who in the first issue turns out to be the human manifestation, not of Raven, but of Titan's Tower itself. And Titan's Tower used to be the Bloodhaven private prison. And so this manifestation, this personification of the tower itself is sort of driven by the spirits of a lot of the inmates that were there. One female inmate who looks like she was electrocuted in the electric chair specifically, but also some other inmates. When she says who she is, she names off a bunch of names, and the Titans are like, oh, those were names of inmates that were at, in the Bloodhaven private prison. So you want to talk about a cheat? Like, nothing at all in the first issue gave any clue that this was who this character was. So, I always say you got to give a series at least 2 or 3 issues to really have an idea. So I guess it's okay that it wasn't revealed. I do wish it was at least hinted at. That there was something we could have picked up on. But then again, I'm not reading these titles in such, minute detail like we do something like The Cull, which it's a more rewarding experience because there's so much depth to storytelling. There's not here. So even if there had been clues, they might have, gone right over my head because it's just not that interesting. That being said, the idea of Teen Titans, or not Teen, but Titans Tower having sentience, I kind of like that idea. Even if, you think of things like Knight Rider or something like that, where there's sort of this personality to the tech. Obviously, it's a little different. It's mystical rather than technological, but it still is interesting. What doesn't really make sense to me, though, we're told same building or what have you, but in the art, I don't see how the building we're shown that's the prison is then Titan's Tower. Like, it seems to me the prison had to be completely torn down and then Titan's Tower built. Like, I don't see how any part of the prison is reused, but we're told the building shares some pieces, I guess. Maybe the foundation, I don't know. Maybe it's enough that it's just the grounds that the building is built upon, but they don't say that. They say the building. So again, I know I'm nitpicking, but I just thought it was kind of weird. And she even though this is Teen Titans, or Titan, I keep saying teen, but even though this is the Titans book, this really is the Towers book in a lot of ways, more so than it is about the Titans, because this character who I can't remember, she's Joanne is what she likes to
Joni. They call her Joni at the end.
I think it's Joanne, Joanne. Yeah, it might be Joni, but I think it's Joanne. But anyway, regardless, she says she likes the name Joanne. So apparently that's going to be
Joanne,
right? The personality of the tower. Whether we'll see her in actual physical form again, or she'll just be opening doors and they can talk to her, and kind of like Star Trek computer, I suppose. Yeah. I find that to be interesting, but she is the focus. Make no mistake, she is the focus of this issue more so than the Titans. So yeah, I thought it was okay. I was completely wrong about it being a Raven. So yeah, interesting choice for sure. What did you think of it?
Well, I think that I was all that bitching I did last issue about who is this woman, because I was wondering who she was because no one mentioned her by name, and I thought it was really odd. And so I thought it was really funny that I thought it was just, frankly, I thought it was bad writing, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, I guess it's intentional. But you mentioned the fact that there was no clues, and there really wasn't. And one of the things that I think, I don't know if this is writer Andrew Constance's fault or artist Scott Godlewski's fault, but they really should have drawn Joanne differently. They shouldn't have made her look like Donna Troy. She looked like Donna Troy or like an old version of Raven. That was wrong. You should have made her look, you should have given her visual cues, like on her clothing, maybe like a Teen Titans Tower symbol or some kind of symbol related to the tower in her wardrobe or something, or some clue or hint in the dialogue. What's that?
You could have done her coloring. You could have given her like white or silver hair, like that matches the same color as the tower.
That's right.
Opposed to dark hair like Troy or Raven, like you're saying.
Exactly. Or even prison clothes or something like that to make her look like a prisoner, because, we do know that the Titans Tower used to be Bloodhaven Prison. We know that. And so, but in any event, it is what it is. I do find it interesting. I agree with you that now with Joanne being this almost the sentience of the tower, I thought it would have been maybe a little bit more, I think a more interesting explanation would have been if Titan's Tower would have been with the Lazarus reign, that in maybe the computer tech or the computer system of Bloodhaven prison being dismantled, remnants of it was still around. And when they were building Titan's Tower, and then with the Lazarus rain infecting it, it sort of merged the two, and the two created a sentience or something. Like, not I don't know. I mean, just in any event, I guess it worked. I just thought. I really think this comes down to the art. I think with the right type of visual cues, this could have been a real cool kind of mystery, one that we could have maybe theorized about in the first issue had we gotten some clues. But as it turned out, I was just pissed off because I thought it was bad writing, but it actually wasn't. It had a purpose. And you guessed wrong, but it was an educated guess. And then we were both wrong. And now we end up with this reveal. And it's like kind of a missed opportunity for a better story had there been a better communication or a better collaboration between writer and artist. And Andrew Constant, I got to say, this is a rare miss for him because isn't he the same writer who wrote the Titans United? Or I believe he is, right? Was that?
No, Titans United was Kevin Scott.
Ah, right. So scratch that. So I don't know what the hell Andrew Constant's written in it, but he sounds familiar.
You remember that Demon miniseries that Brad Walker drew?
Demon miniseries.
Hell on Earth.
Oh wow, yeah, that's going back a ways.
Yeah, he did that, and he's done some other a lot of one shot anthology stuff.
Yeah,
so I mean, I typically like his stuff, and it's not a bad story. I think maybe the limitation of 2 issues, and it is a lot of characters. We've seen this before. You look at Tim Sheridan's run on Titans Academy, where he had a lot of editorial interference. It's a lot to juggle, right?
Yeah,
like if this had just been focused on Raven and Joanne, or Donna Troy and Joanne, it might have worked without having to put in so much. Because again, this last issue, the Titans are barely in it. It's all about Joanne, really. So anyway, let's move on. I have a feeling, if I had to guess, this is going to be my guess for the Night Terrors book that you liked. It's Night Terrors Detective Comics #2, written by Dan Waters, Riccardo Federici. Mike Perkins and Stefano Raphael are the artists. Brad Anderson, Mike Spicer, and Lee Luffridge handle the colors. Steve Wan's on letters. And then, is this one of the ones that has a backup? Or several that...
No backup in this one.
No backup in this one, no. Just an ending that, we'll talk about, which I thought was kind of weird. But anyway, am I right? Is this the Night Terrors one that you enjoyed?
You are right. It was a good guess. And the reason why I like it is, Dan Waters, man, he's a writer that I'm beginning to think the reason why I never appreciated some of his past writing, because he wrote the Arkham Map War or
New World Order.
And I think maybe it was because Danny was the artist that it didn't quite work for me. But maybe it's this art by Federici here that just makes this a little bit more easy for me. He just tells a better story here. I really like this. What Dan Waters manages to do here with Enrique Federici's art, he manages to tell a story, a nightmare, almost within a nightmare, because this is the story being told here is that there are 3 citizens of Gotham who basically, using their imagination, call upon these penta priests in order to make a wish, and one of them wishes for wealth, and one woman wishes for wealth, and one man named Mortimer wishes for power, and a third person who ends up being revealed as Barbara Gordon wishes for knowledge. And what's incredible about it, and how Dan Waters manages to draw all this in, is the guy who wishes for power ends up wearing the sort of like the bat suit that James Gordon wore when he was Batman, and he becomes all corrupted, and tries to essentially destroy Gotham in a vain attempt to save it. Meanwhile, the woman who wishes for wealth, to use the wealth to try to save Gotham, she ends up puking out diamonds at the end of the first issue. So, because the Penta priests from the 5th dimension, they give you what you wish for, but they give you the darkest aspect of what you wish for. And so the woman who wishes for wealth chokes and on diamonds. The guy that wishes for power becomes a corrupt version of Batman. And Barbara Gordon wishes for knowledge, and in a stroke of what I think is subtly brilliant by Dan Waters is that the knowledge that Barbara Gordon gains is the knowledge and the realization of what has already been revealed in the pages of Batman, and that is she's noticed in the pages of Detective Comics that Batman is slowing down, Bruce Wayne is slowing down. She also noticed that her father, Jim Gordon, his when did his hair become completely gray? Dad, you're getting old. Batman is slower than he used to be. Even Bruce Wayne, Batman himself has acknowledged that. And the idea that we're so fragile, and to the Pentapriests, we're also fragile in this dimension. And the Pentapriests are from that fifth dimension, and they literally can block out insomnia. Insomnia was prevented from entering this particular nightmare because the Pentapriests, who are sort of powered by the imagination of people, as embodied through this watch, this clock that Barbara Gordon herself acquired on the dark web. That's how they were manifested. And so it ends here with Barbara Gordon shattering into glass, with Jim Gordon also breaking into glass, with the woman dying of puking out diamonds, the one guy being destroyed by becoming a corrupted Batman. And then at the very end, the final page, just when you think the Pentapriests might be a figment of the imagination, maybe this is all a dream, and we've all just, and Dan Waters has pulled a fast one on all of us. But then the final page reveals that an unknown mysterious individual has walked into a clock, a watch shop, and buys the very same clock that Barbara Gordon referenced as being able to access the fifth dimension, meaning that we might see the Pentapriests at some time in the future, notwithstanding that we first meet them here in Night Terrors. I thought it was brilliant. I love this story of, be careful what you wish for. You get the darker aspects of what you wish for. It's a real twist on like three wishes, and you got these three outstanding citizens of Gotham, all well-meaning, all want to make Gotham a better place, a man, woman, and Barbara Gordon, and oh my God, things go awry, and it really does turn into a nightmare. I thought this was so well done. This could have been essentially a story outside of Night Terrors, and it would still work. I thought it worked so well. Dan Waters' stories in the past, when he's done backups, when he did the backup in Detective Comics for Ram V, a lot of his short stories didn't work at all. A lot of it had to do, I think, maybe because the artist he was with, or maybe I just struggled with Dan Waters' writing. But this one, he nailed it. I just happened to understand it this time, and I'm so glad I did. And so I'm really hoping that Dan Waters continues to impress me like this, because I really enjoyed this, and this is my Night Terrors pick of the week for Night Terrors. So, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I agree with you on the art. First half of the book is Federici. Second half is Perkins, and I think Stefano Raphael does that last page. I have absolutely no idea who the mysterious guy is that buys the clock off the wall.
Yeah,
I wish I knew who it was, but yeah, I have no clue. Didn't look like a familiar person or what have you. I also thought, but the art's amazing, right? Like the scene where Gordon tricks the guy, Blake, into destroying the police cruiser he comes in, and then fools him into thinking that that he's killed his own family. That was just, wow. The scene where the car explodes is just, it just looks really cool. It's just done really, really well.
It's really.
But cool. Yeah, I thought that this was really strong storytelling, and the only nitpick I have, you mentioned what Barbara Gordon wished for, and I just don't know that resonated with me that well. Because she says she kind of knew that she was being tricked in a way, or that she shouldn't necessarily be wishing for what she was wishing for. So yeah, I just wasn't sure that worked. That it worked for me, because she says something when she's kind of laying there when her father discovers her. She talks about how she's knew better than to think that wishes granted by gods basically wouldn't come with strings attached. That they wouldn't be trying to trick them in a way. So that didn't exactly ring true for me, especially because Barbara is supposed to be so intelligent. But I get it. It needed to be that way for the story to work. So I didn't mind it necessarily. I thought it was okay. Other than that, yeah, I mean, it was a little, I don't want to say paint by the numbers or what have you, but you're right in saying that it felt like it could be a story that didn't necessarily have to be tied into Night Terrors. That was definitely true. So yeah, it was very strong, and the artwork was great as well. So don't really have much more to add. All right, let's move on. Night Terrors Action Comics number 2. Power Girl story written by Leah Williams. Art is by Vasco Gregev. Colors by Alex Guermas and letters by Becca Carey. And then we have a very short second story, I guess we'll say. I don't even know if it's a second story. I guess it's a continuation. I guess it's just an epilogue of the first one because it's by the same creative team that leads into Power Girl number 1. It's coming out in September. But then we do have the second story that's by writer Philip Kennedy Johnson. Art is by Miko Suyan and Fico Osio. Colors by Romulo Fajardo Jr. and letters by Dave Sharp. So what did you think of this, Ryan?
I thought this was really by the numbers. I thought it was boring. Yeah, that's going to be my sum up of the last few we do here for Night Terrors. It's just writer Lee Williams here. Just this wasn't. I didn't find it particularly revealing to me. I didn't find it all that exciting. This was very, very by the numbers. This was just a glorified ongoing. This was a conversation that it didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. This is just Power Girl waking up. Every time she wakes up, she was waking up to another dream, and it's Omen, and her. It's not really Omen. It's insomnia, and it's just a bad dream. That's it. And Power Girl's actually sleeping or somewhere else, and it doesn't do anything. Like it doesn't. We don't really learn anything about Kara. Paige. We don't learn anything about Omen. This was really very disappointing. I like the first. I like Night Terrors Action Comics number 1, where at least maybe we got some sign of how Paige conceptualized her history on Krypton before she went to Earth 2 and before all that jazz. Like I would have liked to have seen some conception, even a darker conception, continued in this particular issue in terms of her past, even if it was sort of twisted. But there's just not much that happens here. I mean, just nothing. I mean, she just she's just having a bunch of dark visions. And she just brags about being able to have the mental fortitude to overcome it. She knows it's a nightmare, and she then wakes up, and that's really it. She goes and she has a shower, and she looks outside, and it's going to be continued in Night Terrors Night's End. Nothing happened. I mean, when I think of what I just finished talking about, we just finished reviewing Detective Comics, where there was this huge theme. There was this other 3 wishes, and there was a story within the story, and a nightmare within a nightmare, and it made you think, and it was thought provoking, and it made you got into the minds of the characters, and the art was fantastic, and it was challenging, and you could see the insightful collaboration between artist and writer. And here we get here, and this is absolutely surface level, unrevealing stuff. That, I mean, it's. I got to tell you, it was just very, very disappointing. I mean, other than maybe the covers, I mean, there's a eclectic array of Power Girl covers, which actually, if I'm honest, all of them are disappointing as well. There's a Cyborg Superman that's pretty good, but most of the covers are disappointing too. So, I mean, hey, you can't hit it out of the park all the time, Night Terrors. Sometimes both the story, the art's okay, your interior art, but the story here and most of the variant covers, it was disappointing for me. So, before we get to the backup, what do you think of the main story with Power Girl?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was okay. It does do a couple of things, and maybe it's just reinforcing some things that we already knew about Power Girl, or if you want to think about it, kind of again being new reader friendly, kind of and this isn't 100% a situation where I would say it's entirely accurate, but it is a situation where, okay, you've got Power Girl, she's very, I guess we'll say, hard on herself is the best way to put it, right? Because when she's confronting the version of Omen that's in her dream, she said, Omen's talking about how Power Girl thinks that being close to somebody gives them power to hurt you, and just a lot of the trauma she's gone through and the things in her life that haven't been great and all that. And it's very telling what Power Girl says. She's like, you make that sound like that's a bad thing that I've kept myself isolated, You're like a stupid machine reminding me of how being loved always led to me getting hurt. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Nobody hates me as much as I hate me, right? So there's some self-loathing there that we're being reminded of or being made aware of. And again, it may be a situation where there are fans or DC fans or what have you, people that have read Power Girl for a long time that or haven't read Power Girl that may not be aware of kind of the trauma that she has, the guilt that she carries around for various reasons, whether it's, legitimate or not in terms of her feeling guilty for surviving Krypton. It's, survivor's guilt. And then the other thing is this idea of this Kryptonian ship that she's dealt with in the past, the Symbio ship that she keeps waking up in time and time again. And that must be part of the story that's going to be told in Power Girl #1, because that's kind of what the this epilogue tells us. Weeks later, whatever, we see this guy that finds some piece of technology that's attached to like a crab or something that was from the Symbio ship, and then the guy looks like he's infected, part cybernetic or what have you. So, giving people that aren't familiar with that story some idea of that. And then the last thing, maybe the most important, is she does go through. It mentioned that she stops counting after attempt number 547 to wake up from this dream. She's just been doing it over and over and over. And so I will say that does speak to the tenacity of Power Girl, despite her, being hard on herself, in a lot of ways being her harshest critic and what have you. There's no arguing that she's not determined, right? She's very much a very determined individual. So there is that aspect of the story as well.
I'm glad.
But I do feel like the second story provides a little bit more context from Philip Kennedy Johnson. What were your thoughts on that one?
Well, I just want to mention a point about Power Girl. You made a good point about her having self-loathing, where she talks about, she hates herself. Nobody hates her more than she hates herself. That's news to me. I would like to have known where the justification is coming from that. In what part of Power Girl's history has she suddenly developed this sense of self-loathing? That's surprising to me. I could maybe come up with something in my own way, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more exploration of that. If these 2 issues of Night Terror's Power Girl was about her self-loathing, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more indication of that, or maybe I missed it. But I think that's an interesting angle to take. It's an interesting angle. I just wish it was maybe flushed out a little bit more. But
and I will say, you bring up a good point, because the other part of that isn't that, I mean, people get Power Girl and Supergirl, Kara, mixed up all the time, right? That is a Supergirl thing, right? When you want to talk about survivor's guilt, that's traditionally been something that Supergirl, that Kara's dealt with, much more so than Karen or Power Girl or Paige, whatever name you want to call her this week. So,
but they do have the same origin. They both lost an entire world, so it would make sense that they would probably have the same kind of self-loathing, if in fact that's an angle they want to go in.
Right.
But I think Tom King did an aspect of that psychological experience with Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. I think it's no one's done it better yet. But in any event, the backup here with I got to say the backup with Philly Kennedy Johnson, Miko Suoyen's art and Fico Ossio, sorry, colors Romeo Forgione Jr. The art's fantastic. I mean, it really is fantastic. The it was a visual feast just to watch. I remember like literally clicking through the pages of these preview pages before I even read the dialogue. I literally looked at the pictures and then I went back to read the dialogue, and I enjoyed the pictures more, to be honest. I mean, this is ultimately at the end of the day, it's just a nightmare. But man, what a beautiful to look at. Uh, this is really good, really good. Probably some of the best art in all of Night Terrors. Maybe it's just my own bias, but I sort of have a love for that traditional DC style, and that's what I feel these two artists bring to the table here. I love the nightmare idea of the Mongol who was being resurrected. I thought that was really cool because part of me kind of regrets that the Mongol who was killed. You know, because Mongol's such a cool villain, and so it's kind of like to see him back, even if he is as a nightmare corpse or whatever. And where he has this the Mongol's chains. He's got this child chained to his chest. I mean, it really does look nightmarish. And then you got Cyborg Superman thrown in. It really, really works. And there's more than a few double page spreads of the art, the use of the different shapes of paneling. I mean, it's just really, really good. I mean, this looks like a genuine nightmarish scenario. And I think it almost looks like it's the equal number of pages as the Power Girl story. But I liked it both visually and in terms of the story itself. I thought was more interesting. Again, I don't think necessarily a heck of a lot was revealed in the Nightmare, but it was just really a pleasure just to sit back and look at the visuals. So what do you think? Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Jace.
Yeah, that's always got to do it at least once an episode. Yeah. A couple of things stood out for me here. So, well, of course, narratively, a couple of things stood out. Visually, you're right. Art is absolutely fantastic. No surprise there. Miko Suyan, Fico Ossio, both artists whose styles I really enjoy. They're interesting team up here. So yeah, very, very visceral, very action packed. A lot of big panels, a lot of stuff going on. So the art, yeah, top notch. As far as narratively, a few things, right? So showing the strength of the Superman family, which it's something that we have sort of seen in the Batman family a lot, especially in recent years, where they really rely on each other. It really feels like a family. They really care about each other. And that comes across. Not to say that you ever think the Superman family doesn't care about each other, but Superman family hasn't been as prominent for as long as the Batman family. So just a reminder. And also Philip Kennedy Johnson, he's talked about, and he's done a good job of portraying it, sort of the I don't want to say negative feelings, but there's a part of John that I don't want to say he resents the Super Twins, but there's a part of him that wishes that he had what they have, right? Because they are sort of the age he was when he disappeared. So they're going to get to have some years with his parents that John himself is missing. And so, there is a little bit of drama there and some maybe negative feelings. But despite all that, they care about each other. They reinforce their beliefs in each other. It helps because they're very young kids. It helps as they're growing up to know that there are people that believe in them. And, Lois and Clark are not in this issue. These are sort of the younger members of the Superman family. There's no Kara or Paige. So this really is kind of the next generation, and the way they stand up for each other and fight for each other. And as Hank Henshaw, Superman, is trying to manipulate the twins and make them doubt themselves, you've got Keenan and Connor and Natasha Irons stepping up and saying, no, don't believe what he's telling you. You have worth. You've overcome so much already. Don't buy into what's happening. So I appreciated that aspect of it. I really enjoyed that from Philip. And then the other part is, as it's revealed, as things are going on, they're battling Cyborg Superman. They're like, this isn't our nightmare. This is yours, right? And it's a good reminder of how broken a character Hank Henshaw was even before he became Cyborg Superman, right? Like, good job from those Superman creators back in the 90s in the Triangle era of creating a very complex character and making him at least start out as sympathetic. Cyborg Superman, he's not a sympathetic character at all anymore. But you could say the same thing about Metallo, and yet Kenny Johnson has managed to make him feel a little more sympathetic lately. But just this idea of a guy who's under intense pressure, be this astronaut, be all you can be kind of thing. And, that expression, shit rolls downhill. He used to kind of take it out on his wife. He not necessarily physically abusive, but sort of mentally or emotionally abusive, because he was under so much stress. And then he, goes out into space and, the accident happens, he becomes Cyborg Superman. And his relationship falls apart with his wife and all that sort of thing. And he blames it on becoming Cyborg Superman in the accident and all that sort of stuff. When really, not unlike Victor Fries in the Batman One Bad Day, Mr. Freeze special, where it was like, dude, you blew it already. Like, you can blame it on becoming a supervillain, but she already didn't want to have anything to do with you. And so I thought that was interesting as well. And we've been getting a lot of Cyborg Superman from Philip Kenny Johnson, and I'm all for it. I think he's an underused Superman villain for sure. Yeah. So got more out of the backup and enjoyed the art more than in the first one. Although not to say there was anything wrong with the art in the first story. I thought the art was by Vasco Gregov was really good. And you mentioned the covers not being that great. I thought they were okay. Like the one with Cyborg Superman where he's flying up, and that's the thing about Cyborg Superman that makes it kind of tough. It's this one, the cover's by Fico Ossio, I'm pretty sure. There's so little like actual human anatomy on Cyborg Superman's face. It's basically one eye. Ossio, I think, does a great job of giving us some emotion. Like, he looks sad there, right? And then when you read the story and see his wife manifest, you can kind of understand that. And then I thought the Power Girl one by Tyler Kirkham was okay, with Insomnia in the background. When I first glanced at it, I thought, why is Solomon Grundy on the cover? Oh wait, that's Insomnia. I thought that one was okay. I also want to mention, we're kind of halfway through our issues here, maybe a little less than halfway. The return of the DC House ad, which has been coming around more and more lately. Apparently there's an Action Comics Presents Doomsday special coming, and the subtitle is Hell Has a New King. So I guess Doomsday's taking over Hell from Neron, I guess. I don't know. Might be pretty interesting. The idea
it's written by Dan Waters, and Dan Waters just impressed me with his Night Terrors, and I have snuck a sneak peek of Doomsday special, and I actually enjoyed it. So I would encourage people to maybe check out the Doomsday special. I thought it was a lot. It was great.
Yeah, it feels like Dan Waters is sort of taking over as DC's go-to like supernatural horror guy. Tynion still he's doing a little work in the Sandman corner of the DCU. But he's doing a lot of creator-owned stuff, so it's like Dan Waters is taking over that role. He's doing a good job. Yeah. But what for some reason, like seeing that visual and saying Hell Has a New King, it gave me this vibe, like if Doomsday's, and maybe it's just for the fact that if a villain becomes popular enough to have their own title, what seems to follow that? Right? First they get their own title as a villain, and then gradually they start to pivot into anti-hero, right?
Yep.
Like, and that's what I saw that and I was like, oh, that might be interesting. And then immediately my next thought was, oh God, please don't turn Doomsday into an anti-hero. Like, there's nothing redeeming about Doomsday. Come on, DC, don't do it. Anyway, moving on. Up next, we have Night Terrors Angel Breaker #2. This is from writer Tim Seeley. Aki Bright is the artist. Brian Reber handles the colors, and Seda Tomafonta on letters. What did you think of this?
This was the first issue of Night Terrors Angel Breaker. I actually was impressed because we got to meet some of the kids of the Cobra cult. I keep on saying Cobra Kai, the Karate Kid streaming show there, but no, this is the Cobra cult, and we met some kids of the Cobra cult, and that are suitably brainwashed by the Cobra cult, but they got their teachers, and they also got this sort of like snake device that Angel Breaker basically wants to obtain as a way of gaining some of the fighting skills of all of her potential nemesis or potential adversaries. And of course, when she takes Angel Breaker takes, oh, I forget the guy's name again. God, what's the guy's name?
Raptor.
What's that?
Talk
Raptor.
about
Yes,
Raptor.
yes, right. Raptor. She takes Raptor, and they're sort of they end up becoming inconvenient allies and they infiltrate this Cobra cult just when the nightmare wave hits, and Angel Breaker ends up having to confront a nightmare of her own making in Nanny Gillo, who is essentially sort of a someone from her past and her childhood that she believes she was destined to kill, and that only she has the ability to take out. And it's sort of regarding Angel Breaker's past. And I want to give got to give some credit to the writer, Tim Seeley. I like that he gave Angel Breaker, he sort of expanded on Angel Breaker's history, and we got even an expansion of the Cobra cult. The Cobra cult, Cobra is more interesting now too, because I like the idea that we got Gotham Academy, and we got Teen Titans Academy, and we got Mystic U, and now we might have Cobra Cult. I like that we're slowly getting these expansions of a younger generation of legacy heroes, and why not legacy villains as well? And so it makes a lot of sense. In terms of the story itself, I thought it was pretty decent. We actually end up with one of the children even gets killed here. This is actually kind of dark. And it kind of bloody well should be, because it's, it is a nightmare after all. But this one is definitely darker, and I expect it to be dark. And I like the rapport between Raptor and Angel Breaker. They both end up having to make a sacrifice at the end, and they ultimately Angel Breaker ends up giving up the very thing she was looking after in order to save the children, in order to save them, to save the school. And at the end, she knows that her and Raptor are going to ultimately end up falling asleep because for various reasons, which I won't go into, in order to defeat, they end up being, when they were within the school, they were protected from certain aspects of the nightmare wave, but that was no longer the case at the end when they managed to be victorious. But they ultimately ended up falling asleep, and they will ultimately end up fighting in Night Terror's Night's End, in what this will be continued in. But I thought this was very well done. Kudos to artist Aki Bright. I thought the art worked, relatively well. It's not particularly my style, but Aki Bright's style does have a manga feel to it. Yeah, we're seeing more and more, obviously, over the last five years, we're seeing more and more of manga style type of artistic influence in the art at DC, and I'm sure that's very intentional and deliberate. And it grew on me, and I thought it worked. And this is one I do think Angel Breaker, these two issues are one of the better Night Terror stories that are out there, and I'm really interested. I'm more interested now in Angel Breaker as a character. I'm more interested in Raptor as a character. And I'm more interested in the Cobra Cult and these children. And so that's a compliment to these two issues. They served a purpose. They got me liking these characters. I'm interested in them. And kudos to Tim Seeley for doing a good job, and to artist Aki Bright, because, I can nitpick the story, but at the end of the day, I'm going to remember it. And that says something. So what about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. If I had any nitpick about it, it's there's a lot here. It's a very fast paced story. We're seeing Raptor, we've seen him before. We're seeing Angel Breaker, we've seen her before, but they're thrown in, and it's such a high octane story and it's very fast paced because it has to be, right? Because Tim's only got 2 issues to tell it. I'm reminded a little bit of his King Shark miniseries that he did recently, which I really enjoyed. That was obviously more than 2 issues, and I feel like that was better, but only because he had a little more space to let the story breathe, right? So we got a little more humor, we got a little more characterization, we got a little more world building. Here it's like pedal to the metal, 2 issues, go. So yeah, I agree with you. It's well done. It does make me want to know more about Raptor and Angel Breaker. The Cobra Academy, less so, but there's potential there. But it would need to be a series that is, don't give me a one shot, don't give me a 2-issue. Like give me a 6-issue focused on Angel Breaker. Like, can we go back and see her origin, maybe see how she became what she is, get a little bit of her time and with the League of Assassins and what have you, because that's the stuff. It's not necessarily I don't want to see her in current time, but I want to know more about how she became the way she, like, why is she the way she is? Why is she so distrusting? Why is she the way she is? And Raptor, he's an interesting character in that he has his own sense of justice, very, very rigid in a way, almost like a peacemaker kind of thing. Like, I want peace so bad, I'll do anything for it, including, killing people, including being violent, which is the opposite of peace. But, Raptor, he's got his code of justice or his own code of morality. And it's so important to him that even Angel Breaker is mentioning it to the kids, So obviously there's a lot there to explore as well. So, I don't know that you necessarily do them together because, again, I really want a comic where they have the space to really explore who these characters are. I don't know if there'd be enough demand for it, but I'm curious enough. So anyway, let's move on. Last of the Night Terrors tie-ins we have this week is Harley Quinn #2 from writer Tini Howard, Hayden Sherman on art, Triona Farrell on colors, Steve Wands on letters. My favorite part about this was just seeing this multiversal, different version of Harley that had this like mashup origin of like Batman's origin and Flash's origin, and she had all these powers, and she ends up going up against Brainiac, and the art style is like this old school Silver Age newsprint sort of art style with the dot coloring and what have you. I know there's a term for it. I can't think of it, but it was just really interesting. And the other thing, and we complimented Tini Howard on this previously when we talked about her Catwoman work, was how well her Catwoman added context. The first issue adding context to what's come so far in her Catwoman run, and then the second issue of her Night Terror series adding kind of foreshadowing what's to come in the Batman Catwoman war, Gotham war, what have you. And so it tied in really well. This is tying in as well, right? Like Harley's having this nightmare, and it has everything to do with Lady Quark and this idea of her being tied into the multiverse in a way and being a very powerful character, which, I mean, when you think about Harley, she's been maybe the most street character. Like if you go back to her origins, right, and really talk about who she was in the cartoon, she didn't have any superpowers. She wasn't really formidable in terms of being a threat physically. She had her giant mallet, and that was it. But she could do damage with it, but no more so than anyone else swinging a giant mallet might have. And then gradually, to make her more interesting, to make her more formidable, the background comes in of Olympic level gymnast and all this sort of thing, to maybe culminated in the Heroes in Crisis moment. You know what I'm talking about, Rocky, where she manages to escape from the Trinity, which I just found to be absolute. I mean, I love Tom King, don't get me wrong, but that was just that was so ridiculous. So this idea that Tini's introducing here with there's something more to Harley than meets the eye, and she's got this multiversal power. I find that to be a little bit interesting. I don't know how well it works in terms of how do you mesh that together with her zany personality? I mean, I suppose you could say that her zany personality is caused by her being influenced. She talks about the voices in her head all the time, right? Or has in the past. Well, if she's got a connection to the multiverse in a way that others don't, maybe the voices she's hearing in her head are other Harleys from other parts of the multiverse. So there's ways to make it make sense, and there's ways to make it interesting. Is she the right character for this though? Like, she has been very much street and not super powered, and now we're getting this idea that maybe she's got these powers. But the other part of it, and the reason that Lady Quark is keeping her eye on her, she even says, "Yeah, you're somebody so special, right? Like, you did it effortlessly. You're able to travel to different parts of the multiverse. Like, that power is a big threat. You could damage the multiverse. But again, it's interesting the way Tinny explains it. She's like, yeah, artists, children, certain people of a certain type of personality, poets, outsiders, they have those gifts. So it makes sense. Like, I like that aspect of what Tinny's done. Yeah. But, man, I don't know. I don't know how Harley fans are going to take this. But I also thought the art was from Hayden Sherman was done really well because, again, he's transitioning through a bunch of different styles, going to that old school Silver Age, Golden Age style, having a more modern style at times, and getting to draw Harley and all these different costumes, probably a lot of fun as well. So, yeah, fantastic art. I like the backup less, but what do you think of the main story?
Well, I'm reminded of the words of the late great Robin Williams, something along the lines of "We were all born with a sense of madness, and we mustn't lose it." Well, Harley Quinn hasn't lost her madness, and last week you mentioned, Jace, that Brainiac seems to be showing up everywhere. He's showing up in the pages of Superman with Lobo, and he's showing up in the pages of Icon v Rocket. He's over on Earth 93, and here he is in this crazy dream of Harley. And what I find hilarious here is that Brainiac shows up and he says something quite interesting to Harley. He basically tells her, he says that he's concerned, and I just want to, where is it here? He says to her, in every reality, the more you dance with madness, the more powerful you become. So he's really concerned about Harley, because Harley, apparently in every aspect of the multiverse, wherever Harley is, she gets more mad and she becomes more powerful. And there is something crazy and zany about that. I don't like that. I've said repeatedly that I'm not a fan of the current iteration of Harley Quinn. I don't think DC is handling the character correctly, but I feel that they're forced to, because she's simply too corporately powerful. I think Harley Quinn is better off evil and psychotic, but they're not going that route with her. And clearly Teenie Howard isn't either. But the idea here that Harley Quinn is kind of a wild card, and in the words of Lady Quark herself, when she says, well, it took you no time at all, and when I saw all that you've done, Harley, I knew that you were every bit the threat I imagined you to be. So you're waiting for Lady Quark to say, oh, you know what, you're a really nice person despite you being crazy and insane. No, that's not it at all. In fact, Lady Quark would appear to agree with Brainiac. The more crazy you become, the more powerful you become, and that's not a good thing. That's not, at least not necessarily a good thing, and I think that's kind of true. And Harley Quinn she is always the wild card wherever she goes. And such a wild card that she's a wild card that, of course, rears her head. The wild card aspect of Harley Quinn will play a significant role in the upcoming Birds of Prey series by Kelly Thompson. A little bit of a teaser spoiler there. And it's interesting to see what DC is doing with Harley, and I understand, and what Teenie Howard's doing here, I think, is consistent with where the direction that Harley might be going in the DC universe. But overall, I really like the art, Hayden Sherman's art. I really liked it. It was perfect. I love the reference to multiversity when it showed Earth Designate Zero with a cool looking costume for Harley Quinn in front of what looked like a new 52 version of the Justice League. But in any event, I liked it. I was completely confused with the backup, and I don't know, maybe it's best that you talk about that, because I don't have much to say about the backup.
I was hoping you can explain.
I don't know.
Okay,
man.
yeah, so, yeah, Presca View, part 2 of 2, Leah Williams on script, PJ Holden on art, Lee Leffridge on colors. We saw last time that this future version of Harley came and recruited the present version of Harley to go and help her save the multiverse. And it's this interesting story where basically they are, from what I could understand of it, Harley has become sort of the guardian of like the last shard of the multiverse, right? And they have to do something like every 10 years, manipulate some machinery or whatever to keep what's left of the multiverse going. And they're the only ones that are able to do that. And so basically, the way I understood it is that Harley, that there's only one singular Harley at a time that's guarding this and sort of using their multiversal energy to keep this equipment going. And then when they get close to being out of energy, it's their job to go into another part of the multiverse and recruit another Harley to take their place, and the cycle continues. That's what I got out of it. Whether I'm interpreting it correctly or not, I actually have no idea if I'm interpreting that correctly or not. I could be completely wrong about it, but that's how I took it. And I mean, I guess it's playing into some, it ties into the main story in as much as this idea of Harley as this multiversal guardian or character or what have you. But maybe it's tying into something that's going to come about in the future. I don't know. Yeah. So I can't say much more of it beyond that because that's what I got out of it. But yeah. I'm not real sure. Maybe you had a different interpretation. I don't know.
No, I really didn't. You helped clarify for me. I was just confused by it. But then I'm not, like I said, I have a bias. I'm not a fan of this. I wanted to look at the brights. I can understand what Teenie Howard was doing in the main story, and even what I guess Leah Williams is doing in this second story, I guess. But to me, it's artificially inflating the importance of Harley Quinn to ridiculous lengths. And I realize it's a ridiculous character, but that's part of my criticism is the ridiculousness of Harley Quinn. Our writers always seem to get away with, okay, if they write her ridiculously, well, it's Harley Quinn, you can do that. If you try to write her seriously, well, it's Harley, we can do that. If you can write her however you want, and it doesn't have to make sense because it's Harley. And I would always write Harley with more of a realistic bend as simply a woman she's psychologically scarred, she's screwed up, she's a basket case on multiple levels. Write her as somebody who is in fact mentally ill or psychotic or sociopathic. That to me would be the more consistent approach. But you don't do that. And as a result, I'm always lost. Whenever Harley Quinn is written by anybody. I'm always wondering, okay, what's this writer going to do? Because they're approaching her like, what version of Harley are they writing now? And I'm not sure if are we supposed to take this kind of seriously now? Are we like, I really, really don't ever want to reach a point where we have an event where Harley Quinn is in any way, shape, or form the centerpiece of it. Quite frankly, I think it would be a disaster. But anyways, I shouldn't. I almost feel bad saying that because I may have jinxed it, and we might actually get something like that. If you thought Night Terrors was, wait till we get a Harley centered event. But in any event, I'm just glad. I'm just glad this. I want to move on from Night Terrors. Okay, keep on going.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have to sort of feel like Harley works best if somebody has a chance to do like a long form story with her. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
As opposed to this idea that, somebody comes in for 10 issues and move on or what have you. I mean, think about how long it took to establish Harley as the character that she currently is. Mm. It took a long time. It took a long time for Jimmy and Amanda to do that. So, yeah, maybe you need to think about writing her or letting somebody have a longer run, I guess, is how I would put it. So, all right. Well, moving on. Dark Knights of Steel number 12, written by Tom Taylor. Art is by Yasmin Putri. Colors by Arif Prianto. Letters by Wes Abbott. Been waiting for the end of this one forever, it feels like. What did you think?
I enjoyed this. I gotta be honest. I was a little bit worried because I still maintain that Tom Taylor is better at writing out of continuity stories than he is stories in the mainstream DC universe. I find his Nightwing and his Titan stories plot wise to be exceptionally boring. High character points every now and then, but when you have high character points in service of a story that's boring, it just doesn't matter. His John Kent Adventures of Superman, boring. I mean, who would have thought 18 issues and John Kent only hits something once? I mean, just not action packed enough. And I was really worried that this Dark Knights of Steel would end on a boring character heavy note as opposed to being exciting plot wise, because Tom Taylor is really good at doing plots when he puts his mind to it. I still think of Injustice, Deceased, and Dark Knights of Steel at the beginning. I wanted this to end on a high note. I'm happy to report, at least in my view, that's what happened here. We got great character moments and we got a great plot. I like the plot sequences here. I like the pacing. I like the fact that we got the Kingdom of Thunder, the Kingdom of El. We got the Amazons represented by Constantine, the Harley Quinn, and Lois Lane being the advisors to the three kingdoms, with Queen Laura, Queen Ivy, and the Queen of the Kingdom of Thunder. That they all team up and they're protecting themselves against an alien attack of white Martians. The white Martians who are secretly working with Amanda Waller. Amanda Waller being the advisor to Queen Laura, and wow. I was not disappointed. I love the action sequences here. This was really genuinely action-packed. I thought it was so well done. I like the battle sequences when the Amazons are attacked by the white Martians. I like the fact that Queen Laura and Queen Diana and Princess Diana they erupt a volcano that reference back to issue 1 when Jor-El and Laura landed on the planet. They saved the kingdom of El from the volcano, or they saved the kingdom of the Waynes from the volcano. But they now erupt the volcano, and there's literally a rain of fire upon the white Martians in order to help defeat them. And it's just great action sequences, and we got so much. We've got betrayals as well. Of course, Amanda Waller, who betrays. I mean, it ends establishing a status quo that, as much as you hate Amanda Waller, Chase, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, because I thought the way this establishes Amanda Waller as getting away with being a traitor, but not being found out, her treachery not being found out, even after the tragic loss of Alfred at the end of this issue, with Batman coming into his own, discovering his powers, sensing the death, the fiery death of Alfred, who's a white Martian. I thought it worked so well. My favorite scene was Diana saying to the white Martians, "Which one of you bastards killed my mother?" And upon finding out, chopping off half his head. I mean, this is Wonder Woman as an Amazon here, kicking ass, taking names. I just thought, this thing was, and how many pages was this? I think this was 30 pages long, and approximately, and it ends with establishing a status quo. You've got a tenuous alliance between the Amazons, between the Kingdom of El and the Kingdom of Thunder, I guess, and you also it teases the Kingdom of the Frozen Lands and the Ocean Kingdom, and it breaks up the machinations of a Waller who was conspiring with the Protex, the White Martian, and we know that moving forward, that on this particular Earth, there's this tenuous status quo that now exists. This is ripe for future storytelling, whether it's Tom Taylor or anybody else. It's the perfect status quo. In many ways, it's the Game of Thrones version of the kind of character reflections that we see on the mainstream DC universe, and I think it works, but it brings its own sense of uniqueness to the forefront. And I think this is going to read fantastic as a trade, better as a trade, because there was delays with this final issue, too long a delay, I think. But I hope they collect this as a 12 issue. I hope they collect this as a hardcover with all 12 issues, as opposed to 2 6-issue hardcovers, which is, I think, ridiculous. But I'd like to see a 12-issue hardcover of this, because this will definitely be on my buy list. I enjoyed this. I really did enjoy this overall. I think this is destined to be an evergreen collection, in my opinion. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it's unfortunate, because this title started off and I was kind of lukewarm about it. But and again, coming off the success of DC's for Tom Taylor, this really did work, right? In terms of really capturing people's imagination and this idea of a medieval version of the DC universe and what have you. So, on that level, it worked. you and I both didn't necessarily see this idea of the Martians being the villains, the white Martians being the villains. That felt like a bit of a surprise. Wasn't expecting that, so that was enjoyable. But you mentioned the delays, and I think for me that's where the problems lie. Like this series lost so much momentum when you got down to like the last half of it, maybe the last 5 to 6 issues, and it felt like it just took so long to come out that it just lost any sort of flow. It's hard enough to keep the excitement going and this feeling of, especially when you're establishing a sort of a new status quo, a new corner of the DCU. It's a little easier to keep the flow going when you're talking about the main DC universe, and people have a good idea of kind of what that is and how it's established and what have you. So it works a little better when you're doing something new. I think it's tougher. It's tougher to make that work, and having delays, I don't want to say it's inexcusable because it does happen. It's part of modern comic storytelling in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, just the nature of the industry these days, it's a little unfortunate. But yeah, I'm going to look back on this series and think of it as wasted potential. I mean, it's clear with this establishment of the League, as they call it, when these different kingdoms get together, that it's basically the analog for the Justice League, right? And yeah, Waller did get away with, and it's completely despicable. And I don't know how anybody could make the argument at all that Amanda Waller is not a villain in every corner of the DCU at this point. She's just a pile of dog crap in my mind. But that's what she's supposed to be. So yeah, for me, this is just wasted potential. And I can't go back, unfortunately. Like, I could go back and read it all in one sitting as a trade, and I think it would probably read better, as you mentioned, and I probably would enjoy it. But you can't go back and capture that initial excitement that was there when you were reading these, new for the first time, and people were excited about it and people were talking about it. That's what you lose, right? You lose the excitement, you lose the word of mouth and what have you when it takes so long to come out between issues. And I get that Tom Taylor didn't. My understanding is he didn't want a different artist to fill in. He wanted Yasmin Putrid to do it all, and that's admirable. I think there's value in that. But it's just unfortunate when somebody slows down. I don't know, circumstances or life happened or whatever, but it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate that the way things are set up, DC Comics can't just say, okay, we're going to have a 12-issue series. We're going to have this one person draw it until it's done, and then we'll put it on the release schedule, right? Like, it just doesn't work. Like, you have to have money coming in the whole time, which means you have to have books coming out the whole time. You can't take long breaks or what have you. So yeah, like I said, just a little bit unfortunate because the series did have a lot of potential, and unfortunately,
I think we should end on a note of optimism because there's lots of series from Doomsday Clock, for example, to Watchmen, where there's people forget about the delays in the long run. This is for people series for new readers. This is worth buying for any new reader. This is absolutely, I think, an easy buy, an easy recommend for all 12 issues.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody who hasn't read it at all, they're not going to care, right? They're picking it up the first time in trade. That's their only exposure to it. They're not going to care that it was delayed because for them it wasn't, right? They didn't read it till the whole thing was out, and that's fine. That worked for them. But yeah, for me, that's unfortunately what I'm going to, at least right now. That may change down the line. I may reread it a year from now or whatever and just absolutely love it. But it's hard to be excited about all the hints that are dropped about things to come with the series and in this world that he's established when everything was so up in the air. Like, well, who knows if we're going to get more, but it's going to come way, way later. I don't want to say what's the point, but I feel like what's the point?
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on. Batman Brave and the Bold, number 4, has 3 stories. Enter the Abyss from Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing as writers. Kelly Jones handles the art. Michelle Madsen on colors. Rob Lee on letters. The Stormwatch story is Down with the Kings, Part 4. Ed Brisson is the writer. Pasquale Colano handles the art. Yvonne Placenti on colors. Seda Timofanti on letters. Harcourt, Second Life, Part 1 from Rob Williams as the writer. Stefano Landini on art. Antonio Fabella on colors and Simon Bullen on letters. And finally, Batman Black and White story called My Family from Megan Fitzmartin as the writer. Beline Ortega on art and Pat Brosso on letters. So to kick us off with The Abyss, what are your thoughts?
Well, Enter the Abyss, written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. What's interesting about this particular story is that it continues in Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic number 1, where we're going to be reviewing Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic issue 2 this week. But this is actually a prequel to Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic. And so that was, I was really surprised to discover that at the end here. And essentially, this story, which was beautifully illustrated by Kelly Jones, which is, I think, probably one of my favorite artists for Batman in terms of whenever you want to draw Batman battling the mysterious or the magical or the mythological, Kelly Jones just has a way of drawing even horror-like magical elements. And in this particular one, Batman sort of just comes upon this woman by the name of Jane Doe. Obviously, that's not her real name, but she's sort of the embodiment of sort of like a vampire. She attracts darkness. And there's this ephemeral dark garden underneath Gotham City, and it's kidnapping. It's kidnapping apparently like 17 different children. A number of citizens of Gotham have been kidnapped. And in this particular story, Colin Rowe, who's the brother of Harper Rowe, Bluebird, ends up being kidnapped after he goes after one of his dates. He ends up being kidnapped, and Batman is basically looking for him. And Batman and this Jane Doe, Jane Smith. I apologize, Jane Smith, who was. It's unclear what her origin is, but I think she was born in a dark garden, and the garden was sort of like her cage. And she used her power to leave the darkness of the garden and to enter our world. And the dark realm could not pull Jane back into it, so it constantly stole what all the people that Jane cared about. So Jane Smith has been alive for centuries, from the origins of Gotham, and over the centuries, the dark garden beneath Gotham was sort of stealing all the people that this Jane Smith loved. And this dark garden is beneath the city, and it sort of plays with its food, and it's just a horrible sort of vampiric sort of darkness. And ultimately, James, with the help of Batman, managed to, I guess, temporarily defeat the darkness. Batman escapes the darkness and brings Colin Rowe back to the surface level of Gotham, while Jane Smith stays within the caves and the underworld of Gotham in order to keep the dark garden at bay. And the dark garden and Jane will ultimately, I'm assuming this dark garden is playing itself out in the current pages of Gotham of Batman Beyond, because what happened in the first issue of Batman Beyond, which we've already reviewed, is that people are being kidnapped in Neo-Gotham, and Terry McGinnis, along with this new Catboy, is being they're looking for these missing children in Batman Beyond that are sort of being hidden within the bowels or the underground of Gotham City. And this is the origin of that, because in Batman Beyond, as we'll get to, Terry McGinnis is saying to himself, Bruce, what the hell did you do? What did you part of the mystery now is linked to what's going on here. And Batman ultimately holds the darkness at bay in this particular first story, and Jane Smith ends up being swallowed by this dark garden, and she may or may not end up appearing in Batman Beyond. But we got to remember that Kelly and Lansing are the writers of this story, and they're also the writers of Batman Beyond. So it's understandable that the story is linked. So, what do you think of the first story?
I wasn't a huge fan. I've never been a big fan of Kelly Jones' art. And you would think that there'd be a little bit of nostalgia for me there, but I didn't even think this art was as clean as or as good as his art back in the day. But I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking because it is moody and it is recognizable as Kelly Jones, and there is some aesthetic there, and it does suit the sort of dark story that's being told. I will say this story carries a lot more weight. I'm glad I knew before I read it that it tied in. I actually read a Twitter post, I think that Jack Lansing posted, and he explains the story of how this happened. Like it wasn't planned at all, right? They wrote this story. Jackson and Colin wrote the story that's in Batman Brave and the Bold #4. They wrote it literally years ago, before they ever knew they were gonna at some point be writing Batman Beyond, right? So when they wrote Batman Beyond Neo Year, it did well in sales. They asked them to do a follow-up series. They were like looking for ideas. Hey, what if we have some kids disappear far in the future? Remember that thing that we created, Garden of Darkness or whatever it was, for that Batman story that we did that never got published? What if we we mentioned that it comes back every so often in Gotham history. What if we have it come back in Batman Beyond Neo Year, Gothic, the sequel, and we'll play around with that. So that's what they've gone with, right? This idea of people disappearing, and we know Terry's down in the bowels of the city. We're going to Neo Year #2 here in a second. But it keeps going deeper and deeper, and it finds out there's still more and more layers below. We now know that he's heading down into this Garden of Darkness. So that's what their plan was. So then, in the meantime, this inventory story, the story that they wrote, that had the original idea of Batman Bruce Wayne taking on the Garden, DC actually needed to use the inventory story because the main stories in Batman Beyond, or the first story right now, is supposed to be, or Batman Brave and the Bold rather, it's supposed to be the Tom King, Mitch Gerard's Joker story. And I don't begrudge DC for doing this. They're delaying it a little bit, and I hate that they have to do this because, again, I think it robs the story of momentum. But the work is amazing, so they want to give him the time that he needs to do it correctly. And so they needed something to put in here. And they said, oh, well, what about the story that Jackson and Colin did about this garden? So it just so happened that it lines up where this issue of Brave and the Bold with their first Batman story is coming out on the same day as Batman Neo Year Gothic 2 is coming out, and it's Neo-Gothic is coming out, and we're getting these clues that, it's the Garden of Darkness or whatever. So that's absolutely crazy that it lined up that way. Couldn't plan it out, but interesting what they've done. Yeah. The second story, the Stormwatch story, probably my least favorite of the Stormwatch stories that have come out so far. I thought the art was pretty solid. But this is basically Stormwatch Night Terrors. And so I feel about it the same way I feel about a lot of the Night Terrors stuff. Like, nothing that happens here really, I won't say really matters, but I don't know how much it's going to play into the Stormwatch story going forward, other than there are some of the doubts that that Flint has about Director Bones that sort of manifested themselves or were brought a little closer to her attention. Maybe they were in her subconscious or whatever. And she does confront Director Bones at the end on the final page, saying, who are we really working for? Other than that, it doesn't really seem like anything that happens in the story really is going to have any sort of long-lasting effects. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But it definitely was my least favorite of the stories. Stormwatch's favorite, but it was my least favorite this time of the books and the issue. So what are your thoughts about Stormwatch?
Definitely my least favorite as well. I was Ed Brisson is usually somebody who is he's done a fantastic job with Batman Incorporated, and he's I've really enjoyed his Stormwatch so far. This was a miss, and once again, it's a miss because he's got to try to make this into a Night Terrors issue, which frankly I think he could have bypassed. I don't think it would have been hard for him to have just sort of narratively skipped over that, but I guess it's kind of hard when it was incorporated in the story. I mean, literally all the individual characters, Core, Flint, Phantom One, Shadow, they all basically they're fighting different versions of their nightmare, and that's it. Blah, meh. You know, there's an interesting bit of dialogue by Phantom One in his nightmare where he says, Phantom One says to his nightmare that your mind games don't hold a candle to basically Ghostmaker's ability to make me feel that I don't matter. So, you know, it reinforces the fact that Phantom One doesn't feel appreciated by Ghostmaker. So maybe that's interesting for those who maybe don't know a lot about Phantom One. But beyond that, I think Ed Brisson was trying to tell us something about this Flint character, but it was completely lost on me. I know nothing about Flint and her nightmare, and she ends up having a nightmare. It says, think of your mother, your father. We save our lives fighting oppressors, men like those who you work for, a cancer that you've helped to spread. I'm not sure who her parents are. And so I guess her nightmare is that her parents will think that she made a poor choice working for Director Bones for Stormwatch. And whoever it was in her nightmare tells her to question who it is that she's really working for. And at the end of the issue, Flint goes to Director Bones and confronts him and basically says, you know, hey, tell me, I want to know the truth. Who the hell, you know, who are we really working for? And of course, it's fair to say Stormwatch is really working for Amanda Waller. Director Bones is likely really working for Amanda Waller. And we're going to see a lot of Amanda Waller. We saw her in Dark Knights of Steel. We're going to, you know, Amanda Waller is pulling the strings here. Amanda Waller is pulling the strings in Doom Patrol that we'll get to. She's pulling the strings already for Peacemaker and Suicide Squad. She's pulling the strings on Earth 3. We know she's pulling the strings and the offer she made to all the supervillains by offering a pardon to any supervillain that can kill a hero. She's also controlling the strings in the Penguin issue 1, which we're also going to be reviewing this week. And she's also pulling the strings in the next story we're going to review in this, and that is Harcourt. So, yeah. So, what did you think of these? The third story here, Harcourt, A Second Life.
You know, my first rule as editor-in-chief at DC would be no Amanda Waller. Yeah. I wouldn't even put a hiatus on the Joker. I don't care. Joker in every book. I don't care. No Amanda Waller. Nobody is allowed to use Amanda Waller. Period.
Yeah. Well, you got to wonder what's the fascination with Amelia Harcourt though? Like, did she exist in DC Comics before, or are they doing this as a favor to James Gunn and because of the Peacemaker series?
No, so yeah, I actually had to go look it up myself, right? I was like, yeah, what? Why? Wait, is she because I didn't watch Peacemaker. I don't know. Was she in the Suicide Squad movie, or is she only in the Peacemaker TV series?
She's in the Peacemaker TV series. Yeah.
Okay, so for those that don't know, this is written by Rob Williams. Rob Williams had a run on Suicide Squad. He was the writer on Suicide Squad for DC Rebirth. And Jim Lee was the artist. Now, obviously, Jim Lee didn't stick with it that long or whatever, but Jim Lee did draw the issue where Amelia Harcourt first appeared as kind of an assistant, if you will, to Amanda Waller. So she did debut in the comics first, and then in I guess the Peacemaker TV show later. So she is a popular character. I think the actress, if I'm not mistaken, the actress that plays her in the series is James Gunn's girlfriend or something? Or
I believe so, yes. But she's a great actress in her own right, though. She did.
Yeah, I have no idea if she was they were in a relationship before, if that had any bearing in her getting the role. Like, I know nothing about it other than, I saw him post pictures with her where it was clear that I was like, well, that's inappropriate. And then, unless they're actually together. So, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I think this is DC trying to capitalize a little bit on the the Peacemaker TV series. It's a very short story, but it's interesting. So somebody's killed Amelia Harcourt. Amanda Waller has used the Lazarus Pit to revive her, wants her to basically do her bidding, as Amanda Waller wants everyone to do, and is holding the fact that Amanda Waller has access to the Lazarus Pits and thus literally has control over whether Amelia Harcourt lives or dies, and is using that to get her to do whatever Amanda Waller wants her to do. So, I mean, again, that's not just despicable and something, that only a pile of dog crap would do. I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Literally threatening someone's life. Threaten somebody with death. I'll send you back to hell. Literally, will send you back to hell if you don't do what I tell you. I mean, yeah. I'm over Amanda Waller at this point. Really am.
Yeah. There's a new saying here that she says. I thought I had it written down here, because Amanda Waller is blackmailing Amelia Harcourt, and and she also infuses Amelia Earhart. It's not just the Lazarus Pit that revives her, but the Amanda Waller has her scientists infuse her with Lazarus energy to give Amelia Harcourt superpowers of some kind, and we're not really sure what they is, but some sort of energy force or energy blast that Amelia can access. And interesting hints as to Amelia's origins. It's almost as if Amelia's father taught her to murder people. So her own Amelia Harcourt has a flashback, and her dad, is watching her shoot bottles, and then after she's a really good marksman even as a young child, and then asks her to help him kill one of his friends. And so it hints that Amelia Harcourt is in fact a badass, and is because she's such a badass, it makes sense that Amanda Waller would want to use her for her own machinations. And the whole point of this particular issue is, in order to maybe get Amelia's blood flowing, Amanda Waller tells her who murdered her. We don't know who murdered Amelia, but Amelia does enter into a club, enters into sort of a club that's normally, the patrons are normally supervillains, and it's Club 5390, and she's going to go there to kill the person who murdered her. And so that will happen in likely part 2. But interesting. And once again, we see more of the machinations and the deviousness of Amanda Waller. But it's nice to see Amelia Harcourt, because she is kind of a cool character on the series, and I'm glad she's back.
Yeah, she's really interesting, and great art in that issue as well. The last story, Megan Fitzmartin, I felt like I had read it before, black and white. So I looked it up. Batman Black and White story. Was this a story we've seen before? It's not. It's a new story, actually. But it does explore some themes that we've seen before. That is, namely, the death of Bruce Wayne's parents and how it's traumatized him. I think everybody knows that by now. But also the strength of family, the strength of the Batman family, much like I was talking about with the Superman family earlier. That's displayed really well here, narratively by Megan Fitzmartin. But really, for me, the point of this story is a chance for Belen Ortega's art to really shine, unencumbered by any sort of color or anything like that. She's a fantastic artist, because she gives us some gorgeous line work, great emotion, really impactful panels, great camera work, moving in and around, zooming in and out, and a lot of characters too. We've got the whole Bat family here taking on Bane. So yeah, I was really impressed with the artwork here. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it actually reminded me of Joshua Williamson's Night Terrors issue 2, where Joshua Williamson had Batman confront his younger self, telling his younger self that everything's going to be okay. You're going to grow up and you're going to have super friends and heroes. And in this one, Batman and the Bat family are in danger of being defeated by Bane and Hush. So Batman both has a physical is physically beaten as well as psychologically beaten by Hush, but he wins the day because of family. And while he's unconscious, he's imagining talking to his younger self, where he tells his younger self, sort of again similar to the Williamson story, that everything's going to be okay, and that he gets his strength, and he almost sees his parents as giving him a new family as a source of his strength against all his enemies. And so even though he lost his parents, he did gain a second family because of their loss. So the idea being that even from the greatest tragedy can arise your greatest triumphs. And so in that respect, I don't know which story came first, and it doesn't matter whether it's Megan Fitzmartin or Joshua Williamson's. I will say that this is by far the best Megan Fitzmartin story I have ever read in anything she's written at DC. And I thought this was very, very well written. I thought this was good. I thought she's got an understanding of Batman that, in my view, I wish she had similar in-depth understanding of other characters that she's written. But I got to give credit to Megan Fitzmartin. I did enjoy this. It was very well done. And the art by Belen Ortega is really good.
I think she does have an understanding to the same depth. I just think you don't agree with her interpretation.
Well, that would be an understatement, my friend.
Which is fine. Specifically Tim Drake, but whatever. Okay, well, now we're on to the aforementioned Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic issue number 2 from writers Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing, Max Dunbar on art, Sebastian Chang on colors, Hassan Otsman-Elhel on letters. We got to see last time the Batman Beyond version of Killer Croc, which apparently it's still Waylon Jones. I almost said Waylon Jennings, who's a country music singer. Waylon Jones. He's grown quite large in the ensuing years. He almost looks like a dinosaur at this point, which, I don't know. It's not necessarily explained how he's gotten so big. But yeah, he's down in the bowels of Gotham, and Terry McGinnis, along with the Catboy Kyle, are searching for these lost children. And that's just Waylon Jones, just one of the obstacles that they're faced with as they continue to go down, 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 as I mentioned, lower and lower into the depths of Gotham. We know they'll end up in the garden. Whether Terry has enough darkness in him to be able to defeat the garden the way Bruce did, I guess we'll see. Will we see Jane Smith? Is she still around? I guess we'll see. And then the other part of the story focuses on Bean Boonma, former Gotham City police officer, and her confronting Donovan Lumos and his continuing machinations to try to gain power in Gotham. So a bit of a transitional issue, getting all the pieces in place to see what comes next. The whole idea of Lumos creating hard light buildings. Would you want to live in a hard light building? I would not want to live in a hard light building. And for those of you that don't know what that is this future technology where you're basically projecting light, but it's light that is like so powerful that it's hardened. So it's like, a hard surface. So this building is effectively made out of light. But many, many stories tall. What happens if the batteries go out, or the power source or whatever, the light turns off? That seems like it would be bad if you're 100 stories off the ground.
Well, I also thought it was funny that Lumos is saying this and he's looking and he's got a shit-eaten evil grin on his face. I'm thinking, well, what's bad about that? I mean, first of all, it's, as you said, it's a dumb idea. It's a dumb idea, but it doesn't sound like an evil idea. I mean, he's actually housing the homeless. At least it sounds like that's what he's doing. So it's a stupid idea because who wants a building of light? But I'm still not clear how this is an evil thing. And then almost there's an implied suggestion that the darkness below Gotham, that somehow this is going to be in conflict with the darkness under Gotham. But the darkness under Gotham is evil, isn't it? And so are Lansing and Kelly doing a bait and switch that light is actually evil and the darkness becomes good? I was a little bit confused by that in terms of narratively where they're going with that.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm glad that Beam Boonma is still part of the story, and Yeah, Donovan Lumos, very interesting character.
Yeah. And
So yeah,
I should add that I like that Catboy. Catboy actually is revealed to be a magician or almost to be some kind of sorcerer. And I like that Terry McGinnis, Batman Beyond, sort of makes some comment about magic. Of course, magic is real. So this is
yeah,
the first. I'm not an expert on. I'm not an expert on Batman Beyond history. It was never really a character I read a lot about. So to my knowledge, Catboy the first magical creature, the magical character in the Batman Beyond mythology? I don't know. That's the impression I got from what Batman Beyond said, but readers can maybe correct me on that. I don't know. But I thought this was well done, and I enjoyed the fact that we, clearly the people of Gotham are former detective Bean Boonma is talking to people who have lost loved ones, who have been kidnapped and have been lost in the bowels of Gotham, and the reveal at the end that the tomb that apparently modern day Batman created a tomb to house the Dark Garden, is this Tomb of Owls. Is that related to the tomb to the Court of Owls? This Tomb of Owls. I thought that's a very curious name, the Tomb of Owls, and in any event. Kudos to Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. Max Dunbar on the art does a good job. Really, giant Killer Croc looks very intimidating. Even the city of light of this Loomis, the coloring just sort of pops off the page. It seems relatively well done, and I'm curious as to this light versus darkness, where how that's going to play out in terms of maybe that's going to be a bait and switch, like I said. But we'll have to wait and see. But this is. I'm enjoying this. I've never been into Batman Beyond before. It was Kelly and Lansing is what got me into it in their first series, whatever that was like last year. So I'm curious to see where this goes.
Yeah, Batman Beyond Neo Year, really my first regular reading of Batman Beyond as well. I shout out to Max Dunbar, the artist. You mentioned how fantastic the art is. But also Sebastian Chang on colors, man, especially when you're drawing Hard Light and Donovan Lumos, who's got the white skin and very bright, glowing, lots of bright blues, or cool blues, I guess you'd say, like not a deep blue, but like a bright bluish white. It's just fantastic color work. All right, up next, Tom King writes The Penguin. Rafael de la Torre is the artist. Marcelo Mayala on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. Brian Boland does a fantastic variant cover, as does David Marquez. Yeah, this a little bit of spiritual tie-in to Batman Killing Time. We do see the same agent that was shot in the face at the end of Killing Time shows up here, and it references Killing Time at one point. But what'd you think of this?
I thought this was straight up. I thought this was masterful. I thought this was absolutely masterful. I had some concerns because I got to tell you, I know this is within mainstream continuity. I've always been nervous with Tom King writes anything that is obviously in continuity. But Batman Killing Time, I enjoyed that. This is clearly some references to Batman Killing Time. I was not a fan of Tom King's Batman run, and I was not a fan of Heroes in Crisis like so many. But I've pretty much loved everything else that Tom King has done. And this one here, what Tom King manages to do here, I mean, he goes back and forth between different time periods. The issue starts off with Batman and Penguin sometime in the approximately a year. Approximately, I guess, in present day, Batman and Penguin are literally trapped in the Batmobile, sinking in the lake or in the ocean, Gotham Harbor, I'm assuming. And Batman is incapacitated. All his fail-safes are done. They're drowning, and Batman is commenting to himself, he can't believe that he doesn't know how Penguin pulled it off. Now, what did Penguin pull off? No one's really sure. But we do know from the flashback, and we know from what we know of the Penguin over the last year, that the Penguin faked his own death, and he basically fled, and he moved to Metropolis, and he basically opened a flower shop, and his children took over the family business of crime and corruption, being a mafioso crime family in Gotham. Meanwhile, Oswald Cobblepot is basically... He's in Metropolis, and he has a flower shop. And what Tom King does masterfully here, and I had to count them, but there's multiple narrators throughout this issue. There's no less than 6 narrators. Batman does some of the narration. There's the Taylor, Oswald Cobblepot's Taylor does some of the narration. Rita Wells, this woman who Oswald Cobblepot, his lover, this beautiful veterinarian brunette, who says Oswald Cobblepot isn't a player. My God, how he managed to nail her, I don't know, but good on him. He has this gorgeous woman who apparently loves him, and they actually have a passionate relationship. She does some narrating. The flower shop customer does some narration. Agent Neri Espinosa, who we saw in Batman Killing Time, does some narrating. And Amanda Waller herself crops up at the end and does some narration when the Penguin is picked up by Agent Espinosa and is interrogating Penguin. We get so much information in terms of what is going on. And what's interesting here is that Oswald Cobblepot does seem to be someone who he's trying to fit in. He's a guy, he's being followed by Agent Espinosa, and he's someone who is, Agent Espinosa intentionally sends an undercover cop to Oswald to try to intentionally antagonize him, to get him to lash out, to get him to do something. But Cobblepot just ignores him, insists on being a nice guy, talks calmly to him, literally sits on the bench, feeds the penguins. He just wants to live on the surface, this appears to be a Cobblepot that just wants to enjoy his life. He's given up being a mobster in Gotham. And that's what it is like on the surface. And of course, we as readers, we're waiting for the shoe to drop. We know that this is not Oswald Cobblepot. Something is going to happen. This is not Oswald Cobblepot. Well, this Agent Espinosa, who we last saw in Batman Killing Time, the last time we saw her, she was shot in the head by Riddler. Well, it's revealed here, she reveals to Cobblepot when she's interrogating him that she spent 5 years in recovery. 5 years in recovery, basically learning to walk, to physically heal herself. And a strange thing happened to her. Agent Espinosa was somebody who swore all the time. One of the criticisms of Batman Killing Time, written by Tom King, was that King made Espinosa swear all the time. She said the 4-letter word repeatedly all the time, to the point that some readers it annoyed. But Espinosa embraced it, and she became known as Agent F. and she basically, the trauma of overcoming the wound on her face inflicted by the Riddler, she gave up swearing. And what's interesting here is that she manages to locate Oswald Cobblepot, and she impresses the hell out of Amanda Waller. Amanda Waller even says that this Espinosa reminds Amanda Waller of her younger self. And so Agent Espinosa has managed to impress Amanda Waller, and Amanda Waller basically, hey man, this is a pretty good thing. We managed to capture Oswald Cobblepot, and they want to use Oswald Cobblepot. They want to reinstate him into Gotham. You're going to go back to Gotham, Penguin. You're going to take over the mafia again. You're going to be the top dog, and you're going to be controlled by us. In other words, it's Amanda Waller through Agent Espinosa playing her games again, wanting to control everything. This is Amanda Waller playing that game. And throughout it all, as Agent Espinosa is talking about her past and almost giving us her origin, Oswald Cobblepot is completely silent. And what's brilliant about it, and this is kudos to artist Raffaella Della Torre, just amazing with Marcelo Mayo on the colors, that you can see, you can just see how calm the Penguin is, and you can see through the narration of Amanda Waller that or rather, actually it's a narration of Agent Neri Espinosa. She basically says that this is the Penguin, not to be underestimated. This is a guy that's managed throughout all kinds of scenarios while Batman's fighting crisis after crisis. Somehow the Penguin always manages to stay in power. He's managed to kill multiple people. He manages to stay ahead of his enemies, including Batman. And he somehow always manages to stay up top. And what's incredible about it is he doesn't say a word to Agent Espinosa. He's interrogated. He gets up. He calmly walks out. he's been told what he has to do. They expect him to do it, and you got to feel so bloody well sorry for the Penguin's tailor, because he takes out his frustrations on his tailor, who had the audacity of suggesting that Cobblepot had maybe gained some weight since his last visit to the tailor shop. And in my favorite scene, one of my favorite scenes in this entire comic is when Agent Espinosa realizes just how powerful the Penguin is. And what's incredible about that is Penguin didn't say a single word. He mocked her a few times, but beyond that, he almost said nothing. And she realizes that the Penguin got one up on her, really, and she swears. And so 5 years of therapy for Agent Espinosa is destroyed with one meeting with the Penguin, and she goes back to swearing again. And you could understand why, because we all know the Penguin, and we all know the violent Penguin. This Penguin is back in full glory because Amanda Waller, you can pretty much blame Amanda Waller pulling the Penguin back. I'm reminded of Godfather 3, the words of Al Pacino's Godfather character, saying, just when I try to get out, they pull me back in, And I thought this was really good. And then, of course, we come back to the present, where it looks like Batman is with the Penguin and they're sinking under the ocean or in the lake. How are they going to get out of that? But I'm really curious, because the Batman asks at the end, Penguin, how did you do this? What did you do? And I am so curious as to what happened here. I'm so looking forward to this. I think that Tom King has gotten better as a writer in terms of if he can channel some of his great storytelling that he put into Gotham City Year One, which I thought was a fantastic noir-like tale. And Tom King has been saying with some degree of ego, well-deserved, that he's really proud of his work here on Penguin. I'm so looking forward to where this is going. And, I'm even pleasantly surprised at Wonder Woman, which at some point we're going to review. So I love this, straight up love it, and I highly recommend this. What did you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. You did a good job of recapping. I don't think you really missed anything that stood out to me. One thing that I'll comment on, though, and this is the same thing with the Riddler in Batman Year Zero that Scott Snyder did, right? It's this idea, we've talked about it many times, the power creep of Batman, as writers continue to try to one-up themselves, and Batman's become this incredibly powerful hero, very formidable, even though he doesn't technically have any superpowers. And so, as kind of a consequence of that, I mean, you feel like it's a natural extension. His villains have to get more formidable as well, right? In order to actually present a challenge for Batman. So, the Riddler went from being kind of this jokey guy that would like leave clues and dress in a skin-tight green suit that had riddles all over it and the purple domino mask and very zany and reminiscent of the Batman 66 TV show, to the smartest man alive and that sort of thing. And maybe the culmination of that evolution of the Riddler probably being the Batman One Bad Day Riddler one shot from earlier this year by Tom King and Mitch Gerads, which without question in my mind is the best Riddler story ever told. Yeah. But a scary Riddler, right? A very formidable Riddler. And now it's almost like Tom King wants to do the same thing with the Penguin, right? Like the Penguin's always been played a little bit as a buffoon, like even when they evolved him beyond just typical bank robber type to, more of a crime boss and running the Iceberg Lounge casino and, pretending to be legitimate, more like almost a Kingpin-like character. If you want to think of the Marvel character Kingpin, where he's doing illegal stuff, but you can't really prove anything. You can't pin it on him. And here we're presented with a Penguin that is, really terrifying in a lot of ways to these agents, right? Amanda Waller doesn't even want the Penguin to know that she's the one pulling the strings. When Agent Espinosa sends one of her underlings to confront the Penguin in the park, bump into him on purpose and then blame it on him or whatever. We're told when the guy's full of bluster and calling him an old man and whatever, but he knows it's the Penguin. He knows how many people the Penguin has killed, how cold-hearted the Penguin is. He walks away. He's himself. He's so terrified, right? So that to me is something that really stands out, because I've never thought of the Penguin as somebody that you would be terrified of, especially when he doesn't have his trappings around him. Doesn't have a bunch of goons or henchmen around him to do his dirty work, and he doesn't seem to be somebody who's physically imposing either, right? Like, you might not necessarily be worried if you were stuck in a dark alley with the Penguin, not the way you would be if you were stuck in a dark alley with Bane, right? Like, Bane doesn't need anybody to handle his physical dirty business. He can handle that himself. But the Penguin, I guess if he has his umbrella, as his tailor would show you, but it's this idea that the Penguin's willing to do anything, right? Like, just a completely amoral person. So yeah, it's interesting that DC's decided, we need to level up the Penguin. He's become a little too much of a joke or a punchline. And this isn't new, right? This has been coming for a long time. We talked about it when, was it in the Mariko Tamaki run of Detective Comics, where we saw the Penguin? He was teaming up with, what was the guys whose daughter was killed? Can't remember his name. He was very physically imposing. But anyway, the Penguin was really getting back out on the streets, getting his hands dirty again. That was sort of the start of this journey.
That was Penguin One Bad Day, wasn't it?
No, that was Penguin coming back. But if you recall, in the Mariko Tamaki run of Wonder Woman, when you had Vile, and he got
you mean Detective Comics?
Yeah, is that not what I said? Did I say Batman?
Wonder Woman. You said
Wonder Woman. Yeah, not her Wonder Woman. Yes, the Detective Mariko Tamaki Detective Comics run.
Yeah.
What was the guy's name? He was like a big real estate tycoon.
Worth, wasn't it?
Worth, yes, yeah. There you go. Yeah,
Worth was his name.
And he made a deal with the Penguin to try to take out Batman and what have you.
Right.
And that was really the beginning of DC. And we commented on the time. We said, we feel like DC is trying to bring an edge back to the Penguin, and that's really and then that led into Zdarsky's run with Penguin framing Batman for his murder, and then maybe we thought, well, maybe DC's not trying to make the Penguin edgier and more dangerous, because they took him off the playing field and put him in Metropolis, owning a flower store, and that didn't last very long. And so now here we are. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where this goes as well. Will Tom King be able to convince me that the Penguin is somebody, Oswald Cobblepot is somebody that you should be terrified of? I guess we'll see. All right, last book we'll talk about in detail on this episode is Unstoppable Doom Patrol, number 5 of 7. This is written by Dennis Culver. We have art from Chris Burnham. Brian Reber handles the colors. Pat Brosso on letters. Assault on Main Street. What'd you think of this?
I just need to get my bearings here. I wish this was a series and not just a mini series. Dennis Culver, I like how the story played out here. This we sort of like jump into a story where the Doom Patrol they're going into the headquarters of, or they're actually entering a city called I forget the name of this the name of the city, but it's actually a front for this corporation called the Medellin Corporation, and it's run by this guy named Brian McClane. And this Brian McClane character is became obsessed with Niles Calder, the former chief of the Doom Patrol, because during a past Doom Patrol storyline, Niles Calder went sort of psychopathic, a little bit psychotic, and he came up with something called catastrophe theory, which is essentially in mathematics, it's a set of methods used to study and classify ways in which a system can undergo a sudden large change in behavior as one or more variables are continuously changed. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's really simple. When you take a stable system and you disrupt it in some way, if you can, is that predictable? If you can create chaos and control the chaos, can you mathematically control it? Well, when Niles, the chief at one point thought that he could, and part of that motivation, that arrogance, that narcissism that Niles Calder had played a role in his leadership abilities of the Doom Patrol, and now McClane, this leader of this Metagen Corporation, he comes on board after the Lazarus reign. He wants to use his corporate power to find all the people affected by the Lazarus reign and create what he calls a golden age for all of humankind. Essentially, he wants all the people that are affected by the Lazarus reign, their metagenes are basically activated, and he wants to basically control all of them. Meanwhile, obviously Niles Calder wants to stop them. Chief Crazy Jane wants to stop him. Doom Patrol wants to stop this guy. And also, this guy, he's working with the Brain and Mala. And this entire town is actually consists of people that are of the Metagen Corporation. And it's a trap. The Doom Patrol are lured to this town basically they're lured, they're into this trap. And because this McClane character utilized Mento, who was the Doom Patrol member who's got psychic abilities, the McClane had his own psychics feed false information to the Doom Patrol, luring them to this town. In any event, Crazy Jane doesn't trust Niles Calder, and so you got that going on in the background, and you got a lot of interesting character work, a lot of great scenes. Chris Burnham on the art really shines. Brian Reber on the colors. I mean, the action sequences are amazing. My favorite set of sequences is there's this meta woman that's created where McClane takes all the nanotech that he can get and he combines nanotech with catastrophe theory, and he creates this meta woman. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, it ends up being a catastrophe because this meta woman, while she kicks Doom Patrol's ass, her body soon mutates and she becomes this globulous, horrific-looking mess. This is where Chris Burnham's art absolutely shines because he's really good at drawing horrific-looking things, and I mean that in the nicest way. And it's just gory as hell. The Doom Patrol end up winning the day, and as they win the day and they flee this town and they escape, they've managed to defeat McClane and his machinations. And while they're fleeing the town, Peacemaker and, of course, the rest of Amanda Waller's squad are coming in, and it's revealed that McClane, this corporation, this Metagen Corporation, is actually being run by Amanda Waller. Again, Amanda Waller has her teeth in virtually every nefarious aspect of the DC universe. Amanda Waller has her teeth in. And I thought this was really good. I haven't even touched upon some of the dialogue that I really like, the character moments, the bickerings between Crazy Jane and Niles Calder, and the fact that Niles is sort of redeemed at the end. Crazy Jane comes to trust Niles Calder at the end, and Niles Calder talks about how he abandoned catastrophe theory when he's a better man than he used to be. And so, at least on the surface, it would appear that Niles Calder is saying the right things, and Crazy Jane herself is maybe slowly going to be beginning to trust him. So I like the character work here. I like the action. I like the pacing. I love the action. I thought it was very well done. This was, if it wasn't for a couple of the other comics we read this week, this would have been my book of the week. So what do you think?
Yeah, I loved it. perfect art to suit the tone of the story. Again, one of my favorite things about what Dennis Culver is doing with Doom Patrol, talked about it a lot, how he's pulling from every era and making them all matter, making them all count. Niles Calder is such an interesting character to me. So really reflective of society, right? In the way that he's been written over the years. Very, very noble, very wise, leader of the Doom Patrol when he was first introduced, older white guy. Of course, he has the best interest at heart. You feel bad for him because he's in a wheelchair and what have you. And then you start getting into the 80s and 90s, and there's distrust there, and he manipulated events. He caused the accidents that caused other people to become Doom Patrol. And then all of a sudden, he's not this heroic figure that you necessarily thought he was. And so now he's in an interesting place. Do you trust him? Do you not trust him? We get that characterization. You mentioned the bickering and the distrust that, and it's interesting, right? Like Niles Calder, known as the Chief, and now it's Crazy Jane, one of her personalities. That's the Chief that's leading the Doom Patrol. But here's a Niles Calder that she's allowed to go out into the field to this town to try to take out this Metagene corporation and Metagene corporation. And do you trust him? Is he going to betray them? Like, what's going on? Like, great subtext, right? Great foreshadowing from Dennis Culver. And then then you get that turn at the end where, okay, maybe Niles has learned his lesson. He's admitting that this idea of the chaos theory is wrong, and we shouldn't have manipulated people and been this kind of puppet master, what have you. But this McLean character going following the same path that Niles Calder took previously, doing morally questionable things and manipulating people and ruining people's lives, all because he wants to get his pot of gold, right? That's all he really cares about. So yeah, really great character work. You're just wonderful. And despite the fact that Culver knows he only has 7 issues, he's taking his time to still tell the story right. Hopefully we get more, but if not, it doesn't mean he's going to rush and try to overstuff the issues. And I really appreciate that and respect that. Then on the other aspect of the story, because Burnham does a great job with that character work and body language and facial expressions and what have you. But then on up on the street of this town where we have the fight with between the robotic townspeople and the Metagene agents in the town and what have you, and the other members of the Doom Patrol, Negative Man, Robot Man, Elastic Girl, what have you. Like that action is fantastic. Like love the art from Burnham. It's so dynamic. He's got great camera angles. He knows what to focus on, and there's a visceralness to his art, like just beautiful. The colors are very primary, which really help sell the book as kind of this, traditional superhero book, which, despite the weirdness of Doom Patrol, I feel like it's had that, if you go back to the earliest Doom Patrol adventure, my greatest adventure, in fact, where it debuted, more of an adventure or pulp type series. And now it's sort of a hybrid between the two, but the Brian Raber color work is done very, very well also. So yeah, I was just smiling the whole time I was reading this. It's just so good.
So much fun.
Yeah, so much fun. Like, I echo your sentiment. Like, and I told this to Dennis when I spoke to him, and if you all got a chance to listen to my interview that I did with him at San Diego Comic-Con, I do not want this to end. And we know Dennis has a ton more Doom Patrol stories. And I don't want another 6 issue or another 10 issue. Just give us an ongoing, we were just talking about it with Harley Quinn earlier, and how, you mentioned somebody new comes on and you never know what take they're going to have on Harley, but that's okay, because much like Batman, you can tell any kind of story with Harley. And I get that. And that's somewhat true. And Doom Patrol, they're a concept that's very elastic as well. You look back on those classic pulp adventure stories in the 60s, you look at, more conspiracy type, more traditional superhero stuff in the 80s, to the crazy stuff it did in the 90s and 2000s and what have you. And then even what Gerard Way did with the Young Animal imprint. Like, you can go in a lot of different directions, but Culver clearly gets these characters, and he's doing a fantastic job of really taking from all those eras and making it work coherently and canonically very, very well. So give him the reins and let him run for 2 years. Give him 24 issues. Give him a 24 issue ongoing. See how it sells. We've got the Doom Patrol TV show. I think it would be a good thing to have an ongoing long run for Doom Patrol. And, maybe you get another artist, an artist with a similar style to Chris Burnham, and they can alternate arcs, which we've seen artists do that before. Like Otto Schmidt and Juan Ferreira on Green Arrow comes to mind. Their art styles are similar. And then at least when you do a trade, the art is consistent. But yeah, I would love for this to be an ongoing, or for this to end and for a Doom Patrol ongoing to start with Dennis Culver at the reins. So hope you're listening, DC, and keep up the fantastic work, Dennis. Okay, in addition to those books, we also have DC Ruby number 7 is out this week. Also, Batman the Adventures Continue Season 3, number 7. Otherwise, we talked about all the individual books. And then in terms of collections, we've got Detective Comics Volume 5, the Joker War trade paperback. So that's James Tynan's run on Detective. We've got Green Lantern Corps Omnibus Volume 1. So this collects Green Lantern Corps Recharge 1 through 5, Green Lantern Corps 1 through 3 and 7 through 38, Green Lantern 20 through 25, Green Lantern Sinestro Corps Special, and stories from Showcase 95, 7 and 8, Blackest Night, Tales of the Corps 1 through 3, and Untold Tales of Blackest Night. So Peter J. Tomasi, Dave Gibbons, Jeff Johns, Patrick Gleason. So that whole Blackest Night era of Green Lantern, that's what you're getting in Green Lantern Corps. A lot of Pete Tomasi and Patrick Gleason work. There's also Robin and Batman trade paperback. That is the Jeff Lemire written, Dustin Nguyen drawn 3-issue series, Black Label, that is basically the origin of Batman and Robin coming together, like how they came together as a team through the perspective of Dick Grayson. Very, very good series. We've also have Wildcats Volume 1, which is the first 6 issues, as well as material from the Wildstorm 30th Anniversary Special of the Matthew Rosenberg run, the one that's currently coming out right now. Steven Scovia is the artist. And then the last collection that's out this week is Wonder Woman Black and Gold, which collects that limited color palette. I think it was 6 issues. 6 issues. So that's a big book, 272 pages for $25. So those are the collections that are out this week from DC. All right. Well, we know your favorite Night Terrors book this week, Rocky, Detective Comics. What do you got for your overall favorite book, or your non-Night Terrors favorite?
Yeah, I just want to show my pick of the week for Night Terrors is Detective Comics. Dan Waters, I thought did an amazing job. And I don't think people who've been listening to our review, I love the Penguin. Tom King's The Penguin. It was by far, it was a huge standout this week. I thought it was just absolutely amazing, and I just can't wait to see where it goes. I'm totally captivated, and I'm. What about yourself?
Yeah, no surprise. I knew you were going to pick the Penguin, just based on. I mean, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but just based on your review, it's clear that it really was your favorite. Can you guess mine based on my reviews? What I enjoyed the most?
You really like the Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol is my book of the week. It was just so much fun. I continue to be impressed by what Dennis Culver is doing, and like you look at this book, and it's not groundbreaking. There's not some huge momentous event that's gonna impact the DC universe going forward forever and ever, and there's no fundamental changes in any of the characters of Doom Patrol, but it's just such subtle character work. The art's fantastic. It's just so much fun. yeah, this is what comics should be, right? I mean, just look at that cover, Assault on Main Street.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah.
Elastigirl, with the giant robot, or what is that? A water tower. She's looks like she's picked up and she's gonna hurl at the crowd. Yeah, just a heck of a lot of fun. So yeah, I had to go with Doom Patrol. Now, I mean, there are plenty of other books worthy of consideration. I thought about the Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic. That was really great, and the Penguin, like you mentioned, also really good. So yeah, I had to go with Doom Patrol though. Just so good. All right, that's gonna do it, everybody. Be sure you guys check out our review of The Cull that Rocky and I did. It's a very detailed breakdown. If you don't want to be spoiled, yeah, go read the book first. It did sell out. If you're not aware, issue 1 did sell out at the distributor level. There's going to be a second printing of the first issue. It's going to be in comic shops the same day as issue number 2. I think it's September. I want to say September 19th or September 16th, somewhere right around there. I think it's the 16th, actually, now that I think about it. Mm-hmm. So be sure to pre-order now. Pre-order your second printing, number 1. Pre-order all the rest of the issues so you don't miss out, because it's an absolutely fantastic series. So, and then go check out our review, or go check out our review first and see if it interests you enough to go pick up the book. So, other than that, I do have another review that should be out today as well, if you're listening to this on August 22nd, and that's a chat with Philip Kennedy Johnson about his upcoming John Stewart Lantern series, which is just fantastic. Wonderful what Philip had to say about John Stewart. John's never been my Green Lantern, but based on what Philip Kennedy Johnson's doing, I think it's fair to say I've never been more interested in the character, which is really cool, right? Like, we're getting that with Colin and Jackson on Batman Beyond, getting that with Dennis Culver and Doom Patrol, like all these DC characters that have never, been characters I've really been that interested in, but just based on the quality of writing, I'm getting sucked in. So be sure and check out that other content, everybody. Don't forget, if you're listening to us audio only, head over to YouTube, do a search for Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom, ! Once you're there, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you know when new comic comes out. And if you're checking us out on YouTube and you want to listen to some of those other interviews that I mentioned, San Diego interviews and what have you, just go to wherever you get your podcast, do a search for The Comic Source, and subscribe. Any last thoughts, Rocky?
No, I will be checking out your interview with Philip Kennedy Johnson. I'm very curious to to hear what he has to say about his Green Lantern, because Green Lantern is it's a great time to be a Green Lantern fan between Jeremy Adams and Philip Kennedy Johnson. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm almost more excited for the villain group, for the threat that John has to take on than to get John Stewart from Philip Kennedy. But there's the way that, I'll just give a little tease here, something that Philip said, the way that he views John Stewart and the aspect of John he wants to lean into, or he does lean into in the series, aligns with how I see John. And long-time listeners of the podcast may know what I'm talking about, because we talked about it a lot when we were covering the Green Lantern Jeffrey Thorne run, the way I saw John Stewart as opposed to the way that Jeffrey Thorne saw him. So anyway, that's going to do it, everybody. We appreciate you listening as always, and we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.